Good morning, everyone. My name is Felicia Adiwinata, and I am the representative from Professional. Now, before I show you anything, I want you to think about what disease you'd expect to be the number one killer in our hospital system. Cancer? Heart disease? Most people go there. The answer is neither. And it's one we see every single day without blinking. Next. On the left chart, this chart maps every single disease by two things: how often patients come in the x-axis and how lethal it is on the y-axis. The size of each bubble is the number of unique patients. The blue dots are the disease we've essentially got under control, common but managed. The green one are what we call silent killers, rare visits but deadly when they show up. And then there's orange, high frequency, high fatality, massive patient volume. The cluster is where our crisis lives. Type 2 diabetes sits right in the heart of the cluster. It's not rare, it's not quiet. It is the most frequent and one of the deadliest conditions in our system, and we've been treating it like a routine appointment. On the right chart, here is the confirmation. When we count actual deaths by diagnosis, type 2 diabetes is at the top, above essential hypertension, above long-term drug conditions, above heart failure, and chronic kidney disease, around 8,500 deaths, more than any other single diagnosis in this dataset. So, the disease we see most is the one killing the most. The combination is not just clinical challenge, it is an operational and a strategic one. Now, knowing it's the biggest killer, the next question is, why does it keep killing? What are these patients doing before they die? Next. If I told you that the patient who died visiting the hospital more than the patient who survived, what would you think that means? More care, better outcome? Well, that's the instinct. But the data says the opposite. On the left chart, we can see the orange bar for type 2 diabetes disease patient, nearly 3 visits per month on average. Now look at the blue bar, the patient who are still alive, around 1 to 2 visits. The same pattern shows up for type 1. Disease patient visited almost twice as often. This is the signature of reactive care. The patients weren't coming in for prevention or management. They were coming in because they were already in crisis. Emergency visits, urgent admissions, complications. We were responding to them, not managing them. And by the time they came in frequently enough to show up in this data, it was already too late. On the right chart, we add one more layer: social risk. We score patients across 11 social domains: housing, food, transportation, income, and so on. This chart shows the 30-day return rate by that score. Our system baseline is 40.22%, and it's already alarming. But look at the patients with a social risk score of 5 and above. The return rate shoots to 40, 46, 47%. We're discharging people, and nearly half of them are back within 30 days. Not because the clinical care failed, but because the condition they go home to make it impossible to stay healthy. Social risk is not a background factor, it's a clinical driver. And if we don't treat it like one, we will keep spinning this wheel. So now we know who's dying and we know how the spiral looks. The last question is, where are all these patients and how can we even reach them between visits? Next. My chart is how we monitor patients remotely. This is how they refill prescription, message their care team, see their labs, and catch warning signs early. If a patient isn't on my chart, the only time we know how they're doing is when they walk through our doors or when they don't. On the left map shows where type 2 diabetes prevalence is highest. Those deep red and pink hotspots reaching 10 to 12%. Now we look at the right map for exactly the same geography. My chart activation color in those hotspot zones are teal and blue, meaning 40 to 60% activation at best. Meanwhile, the urban center glows yellow-green, above 80%. The place where diabetes is worse are the place where our digital risk is at weakest. This is not a coincidence. It maps out perfectly. On the bar chart, puts a number to it. Urban or valid address patients over 15,000 my chart activation. Rural or privacy marked patients, the one living in those hotspot zones, just 4,200. That's nearly 4 times gap in our ability to reach the people who need us most between visits. And now, connect this back to where we saw it in slide 2. The patients are bouncing back between 30 days. They're not managing their care condition at home. Part of the reason is that we have almost no channel to support them at home because they're not on my chart and we don't know exactly where they live. So here's what the sixth chart told us. The disease killing most people in our system is one we see every single day. The patients who die are visiting us twice as often as those who survive, which means we're catching them in crisis, not before it. Social vulnerability is driving them back to our doors within a month of discharge. And the communities where all of this is worse are the ones we can reach at least digitally. This is not a clinical failure, it's a system failure. And the system failures have solutions. What I'm recommending is that we digitally access and social risk the same way we treat a lab result as clinical data that requires a clinical response. That concludes my presentation from my team professional. Thank you all for listening.